What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN Recaps. I'm Jude, that's Ethan, and today, as always, we're going to be talking some San Antonio Spurs, Ethan, and we're actually coming off of a very enjoyable game Tuesday night.
Yeah, finally a dub. I think we jokingly said this will be one of the few that we really have a competitive chance in, and that's because it's the Brooklyn Nets, who are even worse than we are right now, 21 and 40. And we also, had an amazing game from Devin Vassell. I think
Uh-huh.
statistically, it was the third best individual performance of the year. If you just break it down as far as his impact statistically and efficiently. He 8 for 11 from 3, 14 of 20 from the field, 37 points, 11 boards, 5 assists, and 4 steals. So this was the game that we've all been waiting for
Mm-hmm.
from Devin Vassell. So that was definitely great to see. Now it's just, can he continue to do this? Not this, but continue to play well for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there, Ethan. And I'm sure at this point, this is kind of old news, but still, obviously, Devin Vassell is the biggest story from this Brooklyn game. Just absolutely took over the game. Not only was it his best game of the season, but this is probably the best game of his career ever.
For sure.
And man, he needed it. Now, again, as we've said in all the other episodes, and like we said on Monday night, Ethan, this was really nice because on Monday night, me and you were kind of texting about this during the game too. But the night before on the stream, we were like, Devin, we love you. Like, we want you to become what we feel like you can be. And obviously, like you said, we're not expecting this from him every night. And a little bit of this is circumstantial with Victor not on the floor as well. Just getting more shots, of course, with the circumstances, as well as what the team's going to look like next year. Not to repeat that every episode. But man, again, as much as it's just one game, there was nobody on the team that needed a game like this more than Devin. And the thing that I took away the most from it, Ethan, was what he said in the post-game interview when he said, San Antonio, thank you for being patient with me.
Mm.
And I'm going to try to keep playing like this. Go Spurs, go. And that's all you can ask, Ethan. I know we were texting about it. It comes down to consistency. Like you said, not to repeat myself again, we don't need 37, 11, and 5 and 4 every night. But I've been thinking about this in my head, Ethan. I've been talking about that 20 point, 5 rebound, 5 assist kind of stat line for Devin, and that kind of being like, him at his best. But, when you factor in just De'Aaron Fox, all of the other guys we're bringing in, whether it's through free agency or the draft, or even a potential trade, that's a whole nother thing that we'll get into later in the episode. And maybe Devin Vassell is involved in that, but we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves there yet. But to get back to Devin, man, again, with all of those guys, taking shots away from him, I'm losing my train of thought, Ethan.
I think I know what you're saying. Like, it's statistically, naturally, 25 and 5 may be difficult to attain with De'Aaron, with Victor, with Stefan, and then the eventual, potential additions later on. And,
Thank
and
you.
I agree with you. The only caveat I will say to that is if his numbers go down, his efficiency can't go down with it. So if he's going to be a guy that gets 15 a game, cool with that. That can be his role, but he has to shoot 50+% from the field and at least, 38 to 40% from 3 or it's just not worth keeping him.
Yeah, what I was going to get to there that again I forgot was like an 18, 4 and 4 might
Mhm.
be a little bit more realistic for him to be like a third option on a team. Now
Mhm.
again, there's still so much that we've got to analyze and break down because Stephon Castle is here. And
Yep.
if we're being honest, Wemby, De'Aaron Fox, and Stephon Castle, as much as this was a fantastic game from Devin Vassell, Ethan, um, if I'm just being blunt, I'm putting all those guys ahead of him.
I would agree with that. And Stefan didn't have himself a bad game. I know it's
Uh
-2 in
huh.
the box score, but 17 and 6, 4 rebounds on pretty efficient shooting. 8 of 15, but 4 of those misses are threes, and that's not his specialty yet. But he's been on the up and up. We've talked about it at length with, since that slump 3-game stretch or whatever, he's been on an absolute tear. And when it comes to confidence in like who I want to have the ball especially in the first 3 quarters, Stefan Castle is
Mm-hmm.
the name that I think of, and then the only person other than that would be De'Aaron Fox, but I don't wanna take away too much from Devin, like, this is what we
Yeah.
asked him to do, and he did it, so props to him. It's just, making this last longer than 1 or 2 games.
I think the key point there that I was kind of getting at is something you already hit on, Ethan. If the numbers go down because we have these other stars balling, the efficiency has to be there.
Yep.
And I think what we've kind of seen throughout the season is on lower volume, his efficiency is decreased.
It has. However, his efficiency was at its best when he was coming off the bench in a completely different
It's a
role.
very fair point.
So I think Devin, with the remaining games in the season, we'll have to see what kinda where his mindset is, where his
Yeah,
confidence is, where his game is, 'cause I feel like his shot just looked different in this game. Like,
it did.
the games previous to this, there was, like, a weird hitch in it. Obviously, his confidence was low. Maybe this one can kinda kickstart him in the right direction, but I still don't think just if Devin Vassell
Yeah.
plays well in this final stretch, I still think bench Devin is a possibility as far as fit, and he could thrive in that
I'm
position.
100% with you there. Not to cut you off,
No,
but
you're good.
I completely agree because I think there is an avenue for him to still contribute to the team in the way that we want him to. And I mean, think about it. Like, if you have him producing like this, and again, this is an exaggeration, but in that 25-5 range off the bench, that is going to be a nightmare rotationally for teams to deal with because you're
Mhm.
having to deal with De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and whether it's Harrison Barnes or Jeremy Sohan in the starting lineup or somebody else that we pick up. Um, you're going to have a lot to deal with in that first unit too. So I'm not opposed to that. I think also as much as right now it feels like he's getting paid a lot, in like 3 years this contract's going to feel really cheap. Um, but that's also why it's attractive in other avenues. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, Ethan. I want to get back to some of the other guys in this game, but to finish off Devin Vassell, the bottom line here, Ethan, we got to give him credit for this game, and hopefully he can build off this.
100%. Consistency is Devin's his Achilles heel so far.
And we want that to happen. We're rooting
Mhm.
for that to
For sure.
happen. De'Aaron Fox, 15 and 7, as well as 3 boards in this one. Not a high volume game, obviously, because of what Devin Vassell was doing, but what'd you think of him in this one?
Yeah, I thought he was really solid. He played within himself. He understood that Devin's the guy that had the hot hand, and he continually fed him. Only 7 assists, which isn't like crazy numbers, but in this game, like Chris Paul also had 7.
Hmm.
Devin was dishing the rock. Like really, this was a team effort, and everyone was concentrating on getting Devin Vassell the ball. And so this kind of felt like that from De'Aaron Fox. Um, and he still had an efficient 7 for 12. Like I
Yeah.
felt like this was a really good game for him.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I take away so far from what we've seen from De'Aaron Fox is something you and I have talked about. It feels like maybe he's not going 100% intensity wise as of right now because it's obvious. The goal is to evaluate everybody else kind of for the rest of the year because we know he's going to be on the team next season, regardless of if he's number one or number two with
Yeah.
Stephon's ascension that we've talked about. So, with all that being said, again, he didn't force himself. This is a really solid game from him. And while we're on the topic, Ethan, I was going to open up the show with this, but I got caught up talking about our guy Devin Vassell. But there was an article that came out today that should be on the screen. Okay, here, let me change the screen share here. But De'Aaron Fox has officially announced, as much as we already knew that this was going to be the case, he has officially said publicly in an interview with Mike Monroe of The Athletic on Thursday that he does require surgery on his dislocated pinky fingers. And what he said officially here is, oh, obviously for me and Brian, general manager Brian Wright, we've talked about the surgery thing. He said, at some point, I'm going to have to get it, but we'll see where we are before that comes. Fox also spoke about being traded to the San Antonio Spurs this season after 8 years in Sacramento with the Kings. First thing I thought was, wow, I'm going to be playing for a different team, he said. I'd been in one place almost for a decade, so that was the first thing that was weird to me. Then it was, oh no, I've got to move halfway across the country. But then outside of that, I was just excited to be able to be in this position. Obviously, a lot of these Spurs are young, but I think they're very talented, so it was definitely exciting. So there you go on some official quotes from De'Aaron Fox. But that is another thing that we have to keep in mind, Ethan, as much as it isn't, majorly impacting his play. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because that was some news that we got on De'Aaron today.
For sure. I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, we're not in a position to win, right? Or even make a push for the play in tournament. So there's that aspect of it. And your first thought is, okay, shut him down, get the surgery now.
Right.
But I don't know how long the surgery will put him off of his, like, I don't know how long he'll be out from actually
Yeah.
playing basketball. But I do think that the importance of him getting used to his teammates and figuring out the chemistry, figuring out the offense, and just being in San Antonio. This was the first game for our second game for him
Yep.
in San Antonio. So it's kind of everything's a new experience. So I also think that these games have a lot more value in that aspect outside of just winning games. So I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
at all, Jude, if he finished out the season and then as soon as the season ended, he went and got that surgery.
Yeah, and it feels like regardless of what the recovery time is, I'm sure it's gonna be long before training camp. Probably, like I said, though he'll probably be doing summer workouts, in late July. Again,
Yeah,
I don't want to completely speculate on that because I'm not a finger doctor or anything like that.
right.
But I would imagine that the recovery time for that is not the same as an ACL, and I think that's an understatement. Um, but yeah, happy to see what we saw from De'Aaron. Um, Again, just kind of like you said, as much as it may not be like full on intensity, the reps that he's getting, as well as kind of just being with guys on the court and learning them a little bit more, is going to be super valuable for next season.
100%.
We'll go to Keldon Johnson. May have been 1 for 5 from three and under 50% efficient wise for the first time kind of since this stretch that we've seen from Keldon, but still 8 rebounds, an assist, as well as 15 points. What were your thoughts on Keldon's performance against Brooklyn?
I loved it. I thought it was great. He continues to be a positive impact on the team. I know the 1 for 5 is kind of the glaring thing,
Right.
like you said, that people will point at, but the 8 rebounds for me and the energy that he played with. If you're watching these games, Keldon is the catalyst
Yeah.
for the team. Even when he's sitting on the bench and the starting unit is playing, he is up, he is screaming, he is coaching guys during timeouts, and he is a leader. Um, and really, the whole team played with high energy in this game, especially when it came to chasing rebounds. But I
Hmm.
specifically noticed it from Keldon in this one as something that he was definitely emphasizing. Um, and it led to fast break points, transition points, and he plays really well off of Devin Vassell. And I think that that's always been the
Yeah.
case. Devin's just been playing relatively poorly, and prior to this like 7 game stretch, so was Keldon. And so now that they're both, or now that Keldon's playing well, and the Devin
Hmm.
decided to join him, that tag team, that duo, that for a couple years there was our number one and number two option.
Right.
That's to me what kind of was that jumped off the screen.
Yeah, and I like to see the staggered minutes, like you mentioned, because obviously, Devin starts off in the starting lineup, and then we bring Keldon off the bench. But that's another thing that ties into your point about next season, Ethan, and not completely shooing away the idea of Devin Vassell coming off the bench, not because he's not starter level, but because it just might provide more value to the team, and it also might be a better fit in situation for him to produce more. And in that scenario, he would probably be playing next to Keldon Johnson. So that's just another appeal, especially Ethan. I'll just spitball some lineups here since we're kind of at that point of the season. But imagine a De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, and Victor Wembanyama starting lineup. Like that could totally work. Um, Again, there's a lot of things that'll happen this offseason that that we'll have to wait and see how they play out. But here on March 6th, that's an idea. I know that obviously leaves some questions for the backup front court when you play Jeremy and Harrison there. But again, we've got the draft, we've got free agency, um, and shoot, Bismack Biyombo had 13 and 14. Man, if we're putting him off the bench. Let me stop a little bit there. This was the Brooklyn Nets. But genuinely, as we talked about Bismack, man, he has been playing pretty solid. But regardless of who the backup center is next season, it's going to be an upgrade over this year. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I think it's tough to really analyze like the backup
Uh
front
huh.
court when we have two potential lottery picks and a free agency coming up. I think those holes, knock on wood,
Right.
should be filled by that point.
Yeah. But ideally, I guess the bigger thing is if that's shored up, that gives us a lot more lineup flexibility whenever it comes to the guards.
100%. And I do think a Devin Keldon bench unit, as
Uh
far
huh.
as like the scoring duo, would be pretty great.
Are you liking it more that you're thinking about it?
I am. I am. I
Me
do
too.
think they play well off of each other, honestly, because they kind of do different things, and then also they're friends. And I think there's an element of they both want each other to succeed.
They're our
They're
age, bro. They're from
they
the
are age.
same kind of, era, as much as it was 2018 and 2019. But that's me and you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the energy is definitely greater when they're on the court at the same time.
100%. I know you touched on Stefan, but just want to, of course, give him a little bit of a
hmm
segment here. 8 for 15 overall, 1 for 5 from three, 0 for 4 from the free throw line.
It's tough, but
Again, yeah, it's tough. That needs to be better. He would tell you that.
Mm.
I still think this is a solid game. The thing is, even in a game like this from Stephon, he's impacting the game so much.
Was it 1 or 2 games ago he went 6 for 6? So this is kind of a
I think so.
cyclical thing for him.
Yeah,
Like, it's gonna be up and down until it becomes, solidified. But I don't think that that's a long-term issue for sure.
absolutely. Man, when I was watching the game last night, I did not really, I mean, I guess I didn't notice Jeremy that much, but I didn't notice anything bad from him either. So obviously, when you look at the box score, it is not a ton from Jeremy last night. But what were your thoughts on it? I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, this was a fantastic game from Jeremy." And I know we do this a lot with some of the box scores that don't stick out, but I didn't feel like this was a terrible game from Jeremy, or was I just ignorant there?
I don't know if it was a terrible game from Jeremy as much as, like, we didn't need him to do anything,
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm in the same boat as
yeah.
you. I don't really remember any glaring moments, from Jeremy Sohan. Maybe that's only because he only took 4 shots. So, like, regardless, I don't know what those 3 misses were. Maybe they were layups, maybe they weren't threes, so they
Hmm.
must have been, like, tough shots is what I'm imagining, because how many mid-range jumpers does he take, or ill-advised shots does
Hmm.
he take? Not that many. So I'm gonna chalk this one up to Devin went for 37. We had 5
And
other
he's
guys
playing
in double
backup center.
digits. Yeah, we had Stephon and Keldon each got 15 and 17 respectively. Like, it was just something that we didn't need from him tonight.
Yeah, like you said, 11 boards from Devin, 14 from Bismack, and 8 from Keldon.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bismack actually played 4 more minutes than him, and I don't think that's something that's been happening recently either. So again, not like a complete like, oh yeah, this is totally fine from Jeremy, but
Yeah.
we're not going to overreact to it either.
No.
Let's see. Okay, want to talk about the vets. I know we kind of touched on Bismack, so you can maybe throw him in here a little bit, but just those guys at the top there: Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul, and Bismack.
Great. I mean, honestly, good games. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. Chris Paul
Plus
specifically,
31.
yeah, plus 31, 11 points, 7 assists, 2 steals, 4 from 5, hit 3 threes, didn't miss one. This was like the perfect game from Chris Paul. If he can do this for us every night, then great. He doesn't do this every night as far as scoring, but he pretty much does this every night as far as, being a pest defensively, getting steals, and then finding open guys. Harrison Barnes, get him in the corner, like Sean Elliott says. It's 100% from 3. Uh, as a defender, I think it's hilarious that at the start of the year, I don't know what his advanced metrics say.
Hmm.
He's not a bad defender. Like, we're watching these games, Jude. He's a solid wing defender.
Yeah.
He's athletic, and he doesn't make any mistakes. And the same can be kind of said for Bismack. We know what he is. He's going to get rebounds. He had 14. He had a double
Hmm.
double with 13 as well. He's
The
kind of
hook
got a
shot.
mean hook shot. Yeah, who knew he had that? He's always been a role guy, but the Spurs are letting him take a couple of hook shots, and he's taking advantage of some easy baskets down low when he has a mismatch. And what else can you ask from a guy that's 32 and
Hmm.
was signed to 10 days before he finally got a standard contract?
Absolutely. Here's what I'll say, Ethan. We talked about this earlier, and as much as this isn't the sexiest conversation when it comes to the roster. If Bismack keeps playing like this, dude, I'm open to bringing him back. And like I said, that doesn't even mean he has to be in the rotation, but just, I mean, he probably would be if that was the case. But man, I'm open to being if he, like I said, if he keeps putting up stuff like this, I'm totally open to bringing him back as the placeholder next season to mentor whoever our next young big is.
Especially if the future of Charles Bassey is unknown, which I
Mhm.
do think it is with his injury history. If we somehow, or not somehow, if we say goodbye to Charles
Mhm.
Bassey, I think it's totally cool with bringing Bismack in as that third string center and at least attempting to find a better backup, whether that be through the draft or through free agency. But if he's our contingency plan, like you're saying, I'm comfortable with the performances he's been giving us over the past couple of games.
Yeah, I definitely like I said, with the way he's playing, I'm more and more open to bringing him back.
Right on.
But with Harrison, do want to touch on him. I just wanted to say when you talked about his defense, it may not be like Gary Payton, but it's definitely like it's a knowledgeable veteran who gives effort. So I 100% agree with you there.
I think it's a marginal improvement over my guy Chetty. And I don't mean any disrespect to my guy Chetty Osman. Some people thought I was being rude to him when I said that early in the year. He's a good player, but I think Harrison's better in that regard.
Just different experience, different level of player. Shout out to Shetty though. Love
Yeah.
Shetty.
He's killing it in Turkey League right now, I think.
Shout out our guy. Okay, so Ethan, before we get into probably the stuff that everybody kind of wants to talk about a little bit more, we will just go ahead and do a quick preview of the weekend before we are back next week. So we do have a back to back starting, well, I guess this would be the end of the weekend, but still, as you can see up here, Sacramento tomorrow night, which will be an interesting game with it being De'Aaron Fox's return. So definitely some storylines to follow there. And then we go to Minnesota on Sunday. And then it's a back to back. So we're flying from Minnesota to San Antonio to come play Dallas the next night. And then we'll play them again on Wednesday, as well as Charlotte next Friday. But I won't get too much into all of the games down there. But just those weekend games, Ethan, with the return to Sacramento, as well as the Mini and Dallas back to back. What are your thoughts on the slate coming up for the Spurs?
I think we have a chance against Dallas. I'm going to take Sacramento and Minnesota. I think that they're both playing very well. We had Zach LaVine
Mm-hmm.
40 ball a couple games ago. Plus, it's in Sacramento. So I'm sure, I don't know if it ended poorly, but it didn't end
Yeah.
amicably either. So I'm sure that they will come out ready to win. And then Minnesota, and Edwards, Julius Randle is coming back from injury as well. They're fully healthy. And I think we beat them the first game of the series and they whooped us in that second one because it was like Anthony Edwards was embarrassed. I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine he's a guy that takes things personally and beats us up in this game. And the only
Yeah.
reason I'm saying we can win against Dallas is because Kyrie's out, Anthony Davis is out. Maybe they surprise us and they catch us sleeping, but I'm going to take our guys in that one.
I hate to copy you, Ethan, but I'm going with the same thing. The only thing that I'll add is maybe the Sacramento game ends up being a little bit more competitive than we think. I would not pick that. I'm just saying that I think that could be a possibility if the
Mm.
team is motivated to play for De'Aaron. But with the way that the Kings have been playing lately, I've seen the way that Zach LaVine's been playing. And hey, as much as this is a comeback game for De'Aaron, our old buddy DeMar always, will want to play hard against us too. So I definitely would not pick us in that game. But if there's an off chance that the team just comes in super motivated, or not off chance, I'm sure they'll come in motivated. But if they're really able to compete and it just works out for us that night, I know that's not the most in depth analysis, but that's kind of what I'm going with here because it just depends on the flow of the game because they could blow us out or it could be competitive. And I know you could say that about every game for the Spurs for the rest of the season, but that's kind of the story, you know? Um, so if they come out and play super hard for De'Aaron, maybe that's competitive. If De'Aaron just completely goes off, maybe that can be a close game at the end. But again, I'm with you. If I had to pick and just be completely objective, I'd go, 1-2 with the win against Dallas on Monday because of just the circumstances they're in.
For sure. I will also say, I don't know who's going to defend Domas Sabonis. I forgot about Domas. Bismack's going to have to really ice
Yo,
them knees.
Okay. Yeah, I retract my statement.
I mean, fingers crossed, Bismack. This is his game. This is prove us that you're the third
maybe,
string next year.
maybe we can, maybe it can be like that Thunder game. We hung around for 3 quarters,
We
but
did.
Domas is probably going to catch up at some point. But anyways, Ethan, that leads us into, I guess you could say, the more well, just bluntly, the more clickbaity topic, which is the San Antonio Spurs being in rumors for potentially trading for Kevin Durant this offseason. Kevin Durant has 1 year left on his contract with the Phoenix Suns. And obviously, kind of a couple weeks ago, there were reports that came out. There was stuff at the trade deadline as well, but it came out a couple weeks ago that it's inevitable that he's going to get traded basically in the offseason, but he is finishing out the season in
Mhm.
Phoenix. There's a couple other teams involved, but Sam Amico from Bleacher Report, I believe, reported today that the Spurs, Mavericks, Timberwolves, Rockets, Lakers, and the Miami Heat will pursue Kevin Durant in a trade this offseason. There was also a report from Spurs Reporter, I believe this Monday, that you sent me that mentioned that the Spurs were potentially considering Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson in a trade package for Kevin Durant. And if there's any of this that I misremembered, please correct me on it, Ethan. But I believe that is the gist of it.
Mhm.
And with we talked about this last episode with the situation that the Spurs are in. Obviously, this becomes much more of a reality as we saw with the De'Aaron Fox trade at the deadline. But here's the thing I forgot about last time, Ethan. One of Victor Wembanyama's favorite players
Mm.
is Kevin Durant, and I'm sure he would want to play with him. I'll leave it at that. What are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I mean, I'm biased. Let me start this way because
Right.
I love Kevin Durant. He's been one of my favorite players since I was 9 years old. Um, I
Same.
think it makes all the sense in the world for the Spurs. He fits perfectly within our system. He's a Pop guy. Whether or not Pop is here doesn't matter, but he's a Pop guy. He respects the system. Back when he went to Golden State, I think we were his second or third option
Yep.
as far as teams that he was considering going to in free agency. Um, our biggest hole is small forward. That's the position that he plays. He fits next to Victor. He fits next to De'Aaron. He fits next to the rest of the squad. The question to me is, does he consider the Spurs a contender already? Because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he's made it clear that he wants to go to a contender. And in my eyes, with Spurs colored glasses, I think that we become
Mhm.
a contender. I think we become a top 4 or top 5 team, a definitive playoff team, not play in, but playoff team with Kevin Durant added to the roster. But I don't know if he, at his age, considers that high enough likelihood to go to the finals. So
Yeah.
if he doesn't, then I think we're out because we saw that he wasn't even willing to go to Golden State this year because he didn't think they were at a point where they could make a championship run. And now with Jimmy Butler, they're playing out of this world, right? So maybe that was a mistake in hindsight. But I think you're getting my point where he's not the type of guy that just go to a team because that's where he's getting traded to. He will make enough noise to kind of veto that if he doesn't believe the Spurs are ready.
Yeah, I think you make a one. I mean, you're right on the money. I'm not to just agree with you completely, but
You're
genuinely,
good.
it comes down to whether or not he believes the Spurs are a legit contender. And maybe, like you said, in Spurs colored glasses, I'd like to believe that he would think, okay, hey, we've got a big three of De'Aaron Fox, myself, and Wemby right off the bat, all stars already. That's crazy to think about that. Wemby's already an
An
official
all-star, yeah.
right all-star player. On top of that, you got Stephon Castle coming up the wings. That's going to be the rookie of the year, I'm pretty sure, by the time it's all said and done. As well as Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell. Now, I say that they would potentially be included in the move. Now, when we bring up this Spurs reporter tweet that came out Monday, we are not treating this as gospel, but we're just saying this is what's floating around. And I do think, Ethan, in a potential Kevin Durant trade, we would at least have to give up one of Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, and maybe possibly both. But here's the other thing I'll say about the Suns. We have an old friend who's the head coach in Mike Budenholzer. Now, I'm not saying he's going to just do everything for us. Now
He's not.
I'm thinking about the Lakers trade. I was about to say, I was like, with all of these crazy trades we've had, maybe he'll throw us a bone. But no, what I will say though is I think negotiations with the Suns will be very friendly. That was really the point I was getting at.
I don't think Bud has any impact in the basketball operations, does he? Isn't it James Jones? Isn't he the GM still?
That's true, but the head coach has some say in who they want on the team and who.
Potential. I see what you're saying for sure, but
But
Bud
no,
and
you're right.
KD don't get along. That's part of the reason he wants out. So I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe not. Uh, I don't know. I think you'd have to include both Devin and Keldon, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
But to me, the question then becomes, how many picks do we have to give up to get Devin or to get KD?
Hmm.
'Cause as much as I want him, I also don't want to completely drain our draft capital because let's be honest, Kevin Durant does not have a good track history.
In one
Um,
year.
2 years in Phoenix, 2 years in Brooklyn, right? Or maybe 3. I think 2. 2 years in
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
I meant like 1 year left on his contract.
Oh, 1 year left on his contract too. Yeah, so he could easily just get up and leave
Hmm.
and go somewhere else for sure. And if we were to somehow sign him to an extension, he could easily at any point say, "I'm done. I hate this place." And we theoretically won't have Pop, right? So we can't. He might hate the new coach. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
So we do have to take that into consideration as well. So I don't think I trade more than 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
And we got to keep at least one of our lottery picks this year for sure.
I hate to put it this way. I know I've said this 1,000 times, but it's really one of those things. If the Spurs do it, then I'm going to trust it. But if they don't,
Yeah, let's be
if
honest. They're
they
not pulling the trigger if they don't think Kevin Durant's staying.
or is going to really like push us towards a championship.
Correct.
Cuz that's the other thing. Like as much as I love KD, like this is what? How old is he now? 36?
36.
Yeah. This is 36, would be 37-year-old Kevin Durant. Now, again, all of the Wemby stuff that I mentioned is still there. Like, there's pros and cons, but we got to weigh them. We got to weigh them for sure. But here's the last thing I'll say on this. I know we're not really giving a definitive answer on if the Spurs are going to or going to not do this. But here's what I will say. I think the Spurs will definitely explore, big trades this offseason, whether it's KD or somebody else.
I would agree with that statement. Yeah.
Last thing I'll say on that, I think just like the De'Aaron Fox conversation, in those conversations, Stephon Castle will be untouchable.
Oh, yeah, no, he's not going anywhere.
So,
not going anywhere at all.
That's kind of my take on the offseason. I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm definitely excited for the draft. I do like the prospect of having 2 lottery picks, but if we can address another need by moving one of those and keeping one of them, like you said, I'm definitely open to that too. I know it's like we've been saying, we're kind of open to anything, but there's a lot of avenues that the Spurs have in front of them, and there's multiple paths to success.
For sure. Look, we're in a great position as a front office. Let's give them a round of applause. We have really put ourselves in an advantage point compared to the rest of the league, where we have multiple options as far as how we want to take our future. So shout out Brian Wright, and we stole De'Aaron Fox. Let's not forget that.
Mm-hmm. And dude, somehow we were able to get the Bulls involved to where we were able to get him without giving up anybody. So maybe there could be some strings pulled in a Suns trade as well. But I'm sure they would play a lot harder ball, especially with a player like Kevin Durant.
The question will be, will the Utah Jazz somehow throw in a second round pick or two to facilitate the deal?
That is a great point. Oh my gosh. Not Will Hardy. Who am I forgetting? Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge still showing up, whether
He's
it's
always
going to
get at least 1 second out of every deal that's going down in the world.
It's never gonna stop. Okay, one final note as we wrap up the episode here. I'm sure a lot of you guys are looking forward to the draft content. And obviously, I think kind of around this time last year, Ethan, we were kind of getting into it. And as much as the Spurs record, well, it is still very different than it was last season at this time. But as much as their wins may not be that much more than they were last year, I still think this is just a very different season contextually. So probably me and you won't get into all of that draft stuff until the end of the season. And we won't have anything to talk about then anyway. So we kind of want to save that content for then. So anyways, I saw some people in the comments talking about that. And I know some other people, of course, are looking forward to, who the Spurs could potentially get to fill these holes. And we're excited to look at those guys too. But here's the other thing. The college season isn't over yet either.
Arch Madness.
Right. So we once we get through that, we'll have like a full tape of season on them. And again, even after that point, we're going to get through the NBA season before we truly dive into those guys. But we will be doing draft content. It's just not the same circumstances as it was last year. So we're not doing that right now.
Yeah, please give us a break. We're tired of thinking about top 3 picks.
I can't. I can only break down so much Dylan Harper film.
Yeah, facts. The Rutgers are like really bad, aren't they? They have both Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, and aren't they like not even going to make the tournament? Tough.
I'm so ignorant. I know like a little bit about SEC basketball. Tennessee's really good. Kentucky's really good.
Balls.
But I'm not locked into the Big Ten, unfortunately. But I know they got some stars, so that sucks that they didn't have the season they did, because I believe the inkling that you got there, Ethan. But any final thoughts on the Spurs before we depart?
No, sir. Good luck against Dallas.
Hopefully we can have, maybe we can have a fight in the Sacramento game.
There we go. That's something to look forward to.
If you guys enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below. Also hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see Jeremy Sohan and Julian Champagny get ejected again on Friday night, because that would be fun for sure. Hopefully it's late in the game though. Follow us on X or Twitter if you enjoyed the content, at SSPNLYT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Go Spurs, go!